In Chapter 11, we'll be learning about assembly drawings. This drawing here is an assembly of a bearing. It comprises of a base plate, two cap screws, a bearing, and a collar, each of which are labeled with this multiliter that references this table down here. This table gives a description of the part, required number of parts, and the material each part is made of. Notice how all the parts, except for the cap screws, were drawn with section views. This shows the inside of the part where most of the detail is to show the assembly, as far as how far the screws go through the part and how much the collar goes into the bearing. Also notice all the cross hatch lines are different angles. This helps decipher between one component to the next component. So I'm going to put this window down. Notice how I have the four components open in separate windows. You're normally used to seeing your drawing graphics window open like so, but if you just press the Restore Down button, it'll change to a window that you can adjust different sizes for. So I organize it like this so I can more efficiently work between my parts. Because generally in an assembly, you'd have separate files for each component. So the first thing I'm going to show you how to do is how to create a block. So I'm going to create a block out of this cap screw here. And creating a block is really helpful when you have to make duplicates of the same part. Also notice how each of these lines that I could select are individual. And if I want to make a slight modification or move to this part, I have to select every individual piece. However, by making a block, it will allow us to just click one place in this cap screw and everything is selected. So the first thing we're going to do is turn off the dimensions. Then we're going to go to the block portion of the ribbon tool panel, click on Create. Here we're going to type in cap screw. And the first thing we're going to do is specify the first point. So we're going to click Pick Point. And what we want to do is specify a base point that we can use to attach this block to our future assembly drawing. So it'd be wise to choose this point about the center line, because it's probably going to line up with another center line, as well as some type of base reference geometry, like the bottom side of the cap of the screw. So I'm going to turn my object snap on so I can snap to the intersection between those 2 points. Next thing we're going to do is select the objects that make up this block. So I'm simply going to drag a window over the screw, right click. We're going to make sure Retain is chosen. If we wanted to, we could make a quick description of this part to remind ourselves what it is and what it's for. Now I'm going to press OK. So now I'm going to show you how to insert this block. So we're going to click on the Insert button in the block portion of the ribbon tool. Here we can choose the different blocks we've made in the past. So I'm going to choose my cap screw. We can also specify or change the scale of the block, as well as change the angle that it's oriented in. So the eventual assembly will need this in a vertical orientation, so I'm going to change the angle to -90. Press OK. Notice now how the block is attached to my cursor, as well as my cursor is attached to that base point we specified earlier. So I'm just going to left click and pick a point for it. And notice now how when I select my part, by just clicking it once, everything is chosen, as well as the grip is placed where I chose that block or base point. So now I'm going to open up a new drawing, which will be for our assembly. I'm going to just use a template that I've made from before. I'm going to change the size of it and place it in the middle of the screen so we can more efficiently work inside of it. I'm going to start off with the base plate, and the first thing I want to do is turn off the dimensions. I'll zoom in here a little bit, and I'm going to highlight the part and then choose Copy in the clipboard. Go back to my assembly drawing window, click on Paste, and paste the base plate. Now this is just a side view of the base plate, so we need to turn it into a section view. And section views don't have hidden lines. So the first thing we're going to do is select all the hidden lines and turn them into object lines by just switching the layer. Now that we've done that, we have to obviously turn it into a section view by adding hatch lines. So we're going to select the boundaries that don't have a hole going through it. I'm going to right click and choose preview. Now I'm going to press escape on the keyboard and change the angle to 30 degrees because we want everything at different angles. Press OK. Now I'm going to select my hatch lines and put them on the section line layer. Now that we've done this, we're going to add in the bearing. So I'll switch to my bearing drawing, turn off the dimensions. This time I'm going to right click, choose a window, right click and then copy with base point. Copy it about that base point right there. It's the same idea as I used for the block. I want it about the center line and about some reference base geometry like the bottom of the bearing because it'll be attached to the top of the base plate. So now I'm going to right click in this window and choose paste as a block. Now this geometry has been turned into a block as well as has a base point. So we're going to just paste it right there. We'll go to rotate in the modify toolbar. I'm going to choose this block, right click, choose the pivot point about that same base point, and then rotate it up. Now I'm going to select it again, right click, choose copy with base point, choose the same base point, come over to my assembly drawing, make some room for it, right click and choose copy as a block, paste as a block. I'll zoom in and make sure that I attach it to the intersection of the center line and the top of the base plate. To double check our work, notice how the center lines line up as well as the top of the base plate and the bottom of the bearing are on the same line. Next thing we want to do is add the collar. To do that, we're going to go to the collar section, and first thing we're going to do is take away the dimensions. Once we've done that, we're going to do the same thing we did with the bearing. So we're going to select it, right click, choose copy with base point, choose a base point that again is referenced about the center line and about some reference base geometry that you're going to use to relate it to another piece of geometry. So we're going to select that point right there, right click, choose paste as a block. We're going to paste it right next to it, and we're going to set it up for the orientation of the assembly. So we're going to choose the rotate command, choose the block, right click, choose a pivot point, and rotate it up as so. We need to select our geometry first, then right click, choose copy with base point, and there's our point. We'll go to the assembly, make room for the collar, right click, choose paste as a block, and we're going to paste it about the center line and these lines. Again, notice how the center lines line up, and so do the walls of this bearing and the collar line up. So we're still in good shape. However, we need to clean up some geometry here to make it a true assembly drawing. Explode this, right click, okay, explode this, right click. Okay, now we get out the trim tool, and we need to get rid of the top of the bearing line here. So that would be between this line and this line here. Right click and choose that point. So I need to get rid of that line. I also need to get rid of a few more lines here that include these lines that make up these, that would go through the screw eventually. So I can't get rid of those yet because I haven't placed a screw. So now we're going to actually insert the cap screws. And as you can see, we've already created the block for it. So we're simply going to change to that window by clicking on it. And we're going to highlight the cap screw. Right click, choose copy with base point. We're going to choose the base point we chose earlier. Click on the assembly drawing. And now I'm going to right click and choose paste as a block. And we want to paste it about that intersection point. And we're going to simply hit paste as a block again, since we already have it as a block, and just it duplicates it and places it right there. So now we need to get rid of some more geometry. Now I'm going to use the trim tool and trim out a few lines. Right click there, spacebar, and spacebar again, and we're going to choose the outside walls here and here. Right click and choose that line and this line down here. That way you can see the screw goes all the way through the part. Spacebar, hit spacebar again. I'm going to choose the outside two lines and then these two lines. Right click. I'm going to choose that line that's part of the bearing that goes through the cap screw, as well as this line. You'll have to hit this one twice because there's actually two lines, one from the bearing, one from the base plate. Right click, choose enter to exit the command. Okay, now the part's actually cleaned up. And the next thing we want to do is we want to go up to the multi-leader style. So now that we have our assembly made, I'm going to make this a full window. I'm going to go up to the annotation, down arrow, and go to multi-leader style. Here we're going to make a new style. We're going to call it balloon callout. Press continue. Under content, we're going to change it to block, and we're going to change the size of the source block to circle. We're also going to change the scale to 0.0625. Press OK. We're going to set our balloon callout to current. Close it. Now I'm going to use the multi-leader tool, and we'll start pointing out the different components of this with the multi-leader. To do so, we pick a base point and drag this off to the side. Then it prompts us to give it a tag number, so we'll give the first one 1. Press enter. Keep in mind you don't want to go too far outside of the part, that way it still fits inside of our title block. Press the spacebar to repeat the command. Now we're going to do the bearing here, we'll call that 2. Collar will be 3, and the screw will be 4. Notice how we have 2 cap screws, so if we wanted to label both of them, we could choose add a leader, choose the leader, and then choose the point we want to go to. However, in this case it's not necessary, so we'll just undo that. I'm also going to change my multi-leaders to my dimension layer to organize my drawing better. Once we've done that, we want to go to our layout, and we want to place our drawing in here. Before we make too many adjustments, we want to change our scale to 1:1, so it's the right size. I'm going to kind of tuck it up in as tight as I can around these edges so that my table will still fit. And now we want to create our table. So to do that, I'm going to go up to the annotation down arrow and go to table style. I'm going to create a new table and call it parts list. Press continue. And for table direction, we're going to call it up. And for the text, so we want a header here. And then for the text height, we want 0.125. And then we'll press OK. Set our parts list to current. Close. And we're going to change back to our dimension line, because actually we want to change to title block, because our table will be in the title block layer. And we're going to click on Table to actually add our table. Notice how our table style is set to our parts list. And now we want to set up our columns and rows. First thing we're going to do is for the first row is going to be the header, and the second two is going to be data. And since the first two are accounted for with these, the rest are accounted for with the data rows. So we actually need 5 rows, and 2 of them already accounted for, so that would just be 3, and then 4 columns. Press OK. Insert our table. First one will be number. Okay, what I'm actually going to do is, and this is how you adjust the grip. So we want to shrink it for number. Now I'm going to type in description as well as REQ for required. Notice how it squishes that in there, so we want to adjust the size of that so it actually states it, and then MATL for material. So I'm just going to fill in the columns and rows, so it goes 1 to 4 as we go up the top here. Description will be the base plate. 2 is going to be the bearing. 3 is going to be the collar. And 4 will be the cap screw with a reference size of 3/8. AutoCAD will prompt you asking if you want to clean up that fraction to a tighter fraction, so I'll press OK. Notice how it changes size. And then for required parts, all these are 1 except for 2 cap screws. And then for material, the first one is C dot third one is steel. Fourth one is steel. And the fourth one is stock. Last thing we want to do is select it. Actually, if we want to choose the move command, then select the table, right click, and we want to move this into the corner of the title block here. That way it's more cleaner and organized. So be careful when you pan when you're in the layout view, because it will actually move everything unless you lock it down. Now you can pan around your drawing. So there you have it, your assembly drawing with your table identifying the different components.